Welcome to April's Garage, and a lot of changes are coming our way. We got a new president coming through.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about, perhaps regulations will be kind of a little easier to get by.
Relaxed.
Would
be nice in some ways, yes.
Possibly, but the biggest one we're looking at are with these diesel trucks.
Yeah, so it used to be very easy to get your truck tuned and deleted. So some background on that. Modern trucks have emission standards they have to meet so they don't pollute too much. And it's made diesels pretty much useless in the modern era. You have a diesel exhaust fluid tank that treats the exhaust to make it not as sooty. The EGRs are all dialed way up, which is what sends all the diesel soot back into the engine, carboning up the engines, basically gumming things up and making them useless. By 200,000 miles, give or take or so.
When do they start putting this kind of regulation on diesel?
In the mid-2000s. Okay. So that old Dodge that I had, that 04 Ram 2500 that hit 1 million miles, that's cool. The last of the old school diesels.
Do you know how
totally
much
left alone.
I loved driving that? Like, I felt so cool rolling up to a red light in Kansas, and all the bros are like, hey, look at that chick driving a diesel.
Yep.
Like that noise from
that old
the diesel.
Cummins with 1 million miles,
right?
Still going strong to this day. As far as I know, when I got the Ford Raptor, I had 2 4-wheel drive crew cab pickup trucks, and the Raptor was way more fun to drive, so I got rid of the Dodge, and it still brought 11 grand because people want that truck. They don't want to deal with the modern crap that you have to mess with nowadays.
It's just wild. A truck with 1 million miles, you're still getting 11 grand.
Still getting 11 grand. 1 million miles, a little bit of rust in the bed.
Right.
It's still good shape, but showing quite a bit of wear. So after that, you had all this emissions crap. But before, about 4 or 5 years ago, when the Biden administration, was really focused on EPA and environment, all that stuff, you could buy a delete kit, which would get rid of that diesel exhaust tank. You could bypass your EGR so your engine's not all sludged up, carboned up, and find a lot of power, too.
It kind of sounds illegal, though.
It was very illegal.
Okay.
It was very illegal. And the idiots that really went too far is when they tuned them to the extremes to where when you floor it, it just rolls coal and there's this big old black soot out the back, and it's just stupid. Or they put in a big stack to make it like a diesel pickup truck, and they'll
Wait, so that's
blind
what that
you.
black thick smoke means.
When they dial up the injection pump to overfuel it to get the most power of the diesel, and they roll coal, and it's dumb.
Yeah.
So that's where they got in trouble, because they're doing these extreme tunes on the trucks. But, the EPA, they just look the other way with that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't anyone getting really attacked by it until, the last 5-7 years or so. And there have been some major cases with some diesel personalities, some influencers, YouTubers that were big proponents of these, doing YouTube videos, selling kits, all this stuff that got shut down, had to pay, $1 million+ in fines. Some people even got arrested for this stuff. It's crazy.
Right.
So, in the instance of this little BMW right here, it is a diesel. And I just put out a YouTube video on it talking about it. I bought it for $1,500. It has 330,000 miles on it.
That's a good price.
It's a great, 400 pound-feet of torque on these things. Just incredible, the power, and really luxurious, very nice.
Sure.
It's $1,500. Got traded in at Euro Asian Bob's, and quickly discovered why.
Uh-oh.
Check engine light was on for the diesel exhaust fluid system.
Yeah.
Not only was the tank bad, but the heater for the DEF system, which I guess they need to hit the fluid before it hits the exhaust for whatever reason, so it's not too cold when it hits the exhaust. I don't know. It was fried too. The part for the tank, $3,000.
What?
The tank, just the tank alone, $3,000.
What?
The heater, $400.
Why?
And then the labor to do it all about $700. So you're looking at like $5,000
to make it emissions compliant.
This is a car that would run and drive perfectly otherwise. It's still running and driving, but eventually it'll go into a limp mode and have no power to make sure it doesn't pollute for the sole reason of not polluting. And at the time, the U.S. emissions for diesels was stricter than Europe. I'm not sure how it is now, but so the European cars didn't have this stupidity on it at the time. So you can do a delete.
Right.
You can bypass all this. It does exist out there, but there's no way in hell I'm doing it, because I do it. I'm a YouTuber. If I put it in a video, they will make an example of me.
So you could get arrested for doing that?
They will find me a $1 billion, take
Right.
everything I have, or put me in jail and make an example of me, which
Sure.
there's been multiple instances of it. So it's like, when I saw that and everything to fix it, it was another $2,000 or so, and things wrong with it, normal BMW stuff, $7,500. But
Sure.
$5,000 of it, and that car is mechanically totaled.
Well, I mean, I kind of get it because everyone's trying to be cleaner for the environment, so it makes sense. But that's a lot of money, and I know you were talking to me earlier about if you need a car just to get to work back and forth, and you have, a $2,000 car, and then also
Right.
you need to drop $5,000 in it to make it emissions compliant. That just seems unfair.
Yeah, so the flip side of this, and here's where I think is the fair compromise, because obviously we don't want people taking brand new trucks, vehicles, and just ripping all that stuff out immediately, tuning them to 1,000 horsepower, and just wreaking havoc.
Right.
But when it's an enthusiast and the truck's 10, 15, 20 years old,
Right.
you have an enthusiast that maybe it's not their daily driver at that point, maybe it is, or it's just somebody who needs a cheap, good used truck to get to work. And they cannot afford a $5,000 repair when their diesel exhaust system goes out and they can't go more than 30 miles an hour. Or some cars, they're programmed to where when you run out of diesel exhaust fluid, it won't let you start the vehicle. It'll say you're out of diesel exhaust fluid, you have like 2 or 3 more starts, and then it won't start again.
That's crazy.
And the level in you could have blue in the tank, the DEF tank,
Right.
but the level sensor goes bad.
Right.
So even though you're not polluting,
Right.
there's stuff in the tank, it still kills the car. You're stranded. It's moronic.
But
So
the world's kind of going electric, hybrid electric. Do you think diesels are still going to be offered in the next 5 years?
well, the problem with electric is the range is severely diminished. It
Right.
has the power to tow, most certainly, but as I've seen with both electric trucks that I had, the Cybertruck and the Ford F-150 Lightning, towing is abysmal when it comes to the range. Like, it cuts the range. It's similar to towing. It cuts the range in half,
Right.
with towing, maybe not quite that much on a gasoline car or diesel car. Diesel's a little bit better, but on the electric, it's
Right.
more than half. And then the time it takes to charge. So most people are using their trucks to haul, long distances with a trailer or whatever. It's not a viable alternative. And the gasoline trucks, they're not supposed to last as long. But personally, if I were doing like long haul trucking, I would get a gasoline motor Chevy without the cylinder deactivation and all that stuff, and just deal with the extra maintenance and the bad MPG rather than that. But
Right.
as I was saying, I think the compromise is after a certain period, because you can't expect somebody that's just barely getting to work or has a landscape business, some kid or
Sure.
whatever, to spend $5,000 because their truck shouldn't pollute as much. Like,
Right.
once it's old enough, it should be exempt. I feel
Right,
like,
but people
right?
are going to pick on it and say it's not fair. Why does my newer car still have to have these regulations and compliant?
You were
on
able
that
to.
level?
You made the decision to buy it new
Right.
because you could afford it, so you have to deal with the consequences. Once
Right.
it's a cheap used car and people need it to get around, they have no choice. A used truck, even now one that's 10 years old, that's a diesel with 100,000 miles on it, can be 40, 50 grand.
Right.
And if you need it, you're buying that, and then you're hit with this big repair, all for emissions, so it doesn't pollute the environment. Like, it's stupid.
Right.
It's stupid. So I would love to see this being relaxed, sort of compromised, as far as the tuning industry and all this stuff. It could go back to the way things were, but maybe somewhere in between. I don't know.
So where do you think Trump is going to land with this? Do you think he's going to address it?
I don't know.
Right.
Because he doesn't like electric cars, but he's best friends with Elon now.
Right.
So what are they going to do?
We'll see what happens. I mean, I do get it though, because I had to dump a car. I had a ML350. And
What year?
2015, I believe.
Whoa.
But I know, I was fancy. Look at me.
You buy it new?
No, who buys a brand new car? I mean, Mrs. Wizard did. The
Thank
Defender
goodness
is
some
awesome,
people
but
do,
some
because
people do.
otherwise we wouldn't be able to buy hoopties. But
Right?
you were
Yeah, but
you were balling, huh?
I get a little bit. I was working hard, but I had got the, you need to come pass the emissions test, and I took it in. They said there's something wrong with it. $6,000 because they had to take apart a bunch of stuff. This was a while ago. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they had to take it apart.
I imagine the check engine light was on,
So
it
that's
wouldn't
what
pass.
was.
It wouldn't pass
Check- right.
emissions in Chicago.
Right. And so what am I supposed to do? Move? $6,000 just like off the top right there when you're not expecting it is a lot. Like house maintenance, I get it. There's stuff that happens, but 6,000 on a car just randomly because of emissions, and that's it.
So
That's too
that's just
much.
the state of Illinois and being a deep, deep blue state, which
Yeah.
I kind of like that there's emissions checks and safety inspections because we have none of that in Kansas. So,
Shut up, really.
So
Wait, you don't get a thing in the mail saying you have to go through.
zero in Kansas. So the problem with that is, like everybody in Newton, Kansas, where the car wizard is, doesn't have their muffler, their catalytic converter, because I guess the crackheads steal it up there.
They do in Chicago too.
But then they
buy
don't.
a kit that kind of like weld onto it so they can't get to it.
Right, except in Kansas, they just don't fix it, and then they drive their car going. Brrr. So we're filming.
Right.
And we call it no muffler Newton because people drive by and just blaring the no exhaust, and it ruins the shot, and we have to start over
Right.
again. So it's just sort of become a part of our videos when we film in Newton. But in
Right.
Kansas, there's no safety inspection, so people can do whatever the heck they want. Just cobble them all together, and the check engine light can be on forever. You don't have to worry about safety or any of that kind of stuff, and just go. Airbag light, whatever,
I
just
thought
emissions.
across America,
they can smoke.
everyone
Nope.
had the same emissions compliance.
That is Illinois. So like Illinois is very strict,
Right.
but I don't think Wisconsin is.
Right.
Like because your dad could rock it with a. Because your dad had to deal with a check engine light, right?
He put just some electrician's tape over it.
Right. So in Wisconsin,
Right.
you don't have to worry about it. The next state over. Kansas, you don't have to worry about it. Florida, you really don't have to worry about it, and that's why a lot of the crap coming out of Florida is just terrible. Enough with the shady people as well.
I guess kind of makes sense because a California car is always a good sign.
California car, very strict. And
Right.
surprisingly, Georgia is pretty strict. So like Ed Bullion, every single time he buys a wrecked car out of Georgia,
Right.
he has to have all the lights off to get it, brought over to the state. So I don't think it's a big of an issue with normal title vehicles, but you can have the airbag light on a salvage car. It needs to be corrected and fixed properly and prove it in the inspection. So he's had to go through some hoops there. So yeah, very inconsistent with the states, but where the federal government was stepping in were the people selling this stuff to delete the things.
Right.
And then the people who were evangelists for them, installing them and saying this is the most awesome thing ever, look at me, and clearly driving on public roads
Right.
with them. And they were making examples of those people. And is it really necessary? Like how much of the environment did you guys save by busting these people? And
Yeah. Well,
I
get
don't think
that.
it was that much.
And that's a good point because there's the cargo ships and the jet planes that, you kind of curb that emissions just a tiny bit that
Yeah.
would make up for the millions of cars going across America all year long.
And there was Dieselgate with Volkswagen, of course, which was notorious because they didn't do the AdBlue tanks like what this diesel has here,
Right.
but they got so much power out of it, and the way they did that was by cheating. So when it got plugged in to get emission tested, it detuned itself, pulled down the power, pulled back the turbo to where it didn't shoot as much soot out the back. It knew when it was
Right.
being emissions tested, and like whoop, it cut the power in half. And when they got caught, it was like the biggest fine for a company, I think, in U.S. history. It was
Right.
insane, like $100 million plus or something like that. So
I'm glad I learned.
it's
what-
interesting. Well, we'll see what happens, but I think there needs to be some kind of compromise.
Right. I'm glad I learned today the diesel bros and all the black soot and what that's from.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can kind of shake your hand at them and be a Karen. Say, how dare you pollute my beautiful America?
You're illegal.
Thanks so much for watching.